and good enough? Was my comment good enough? Did I sound smart? Did I sound like I knew what I was talking about?
The Gen Zers of the world and the alphas of the world are kind of claiming more of their spot on what they're worth.
Even now, when you say that story, I get goosebumps. Whereas women will often say, my work will speak for itself. I don't have to brag
Oh,
about it.
God.
I just do the work, I'll be rewarded.
Hi, welcome to Asia K Podcast. Today we're going to delve into the essence of personal growth and leadership. I'm Karol, here to navigate you through inspiring stories, insights, and strategies that fosters empowerment and change. In today's episode, we'll explore a topic that affects us all: self-worth. We'll delve into how external factors, especially in the workplace, can influence our essence of self worth and discuss strategies for nurturing and maintaining a strong sense of inherited value. We will be taking a heart to heart look at knowing why your worth starts from within, especially into the bustling business world. Have you ever questioned your value in the workplace, despite of your skills and accomplishment? You're not alone. Many of us, especially women and people of color, face this struggle daily. But what if we told you that your worth is inherited and unshakable, regardless of external validation? In today's episode, we will explore how societal norms and corporate culture chips away at our sense of self-worth and how we can reclaim it. Grab your favorite cup of something cozy and let's dive into the questions together. Today, I am thrilled to explore with someone truly exceptional. Her name is Tammi Teague. Tammi has dedicated her career to helping people step into their own spotlight. She has 20 years of corporate culture experience, and she is an executive coach that helps leaders go into their C-suite job that they've always dreamed of. With honesty and true care, Tammi has accomplished amazing results in her career, working for top Fortune 500 companies, leading and changing cultures, and making workplace better. She's the perfect guest for today's topic. Tammi, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Karol. I'm so excited to be here. And congratulations on the podcast. I'm rooting for you, sister. I'm rooting for you.
Why are we constantly asking ourselves, are we worth it? What is the value that we bring? And why does it come up the most at the places that we work?
Yeah, I think, Karol, it is human nature that we need almost continuous validation of who we are. And I think in today's environment, if you think about it, where people are 24/7 almost glued to a screen and looking for validation through thumbs up, likes, hearts, reposting, all of that, it just feeds into this natural inclination that we have to make sure people still see us, still love us, and still have some value for us. And I think that, the reason I love this concept around self-worth is that we all are worthy just by being here. If there's
Hmm.
nothing you need to do to earn it, there's nothing you really can or should do to earn it. We are all created and come with natural value and worth. And our society has created environments where repeatedly that worth is questioned or targeted or pressed. And again, we are constantly looking for that validation. And I think in the workplace, it is even amplified. Think about the systems that exist in the workplace, things like performance appraisals, things like the selection of teams, things like getting promoted. All of these things sort of hit against this natural value that we have. And frankly, take our own value and put it outside of ourselves because I'm looking to you or to my leader to say that I'm good enough. When really the point of worth and self-worth is my belief, my self-recognition of my worth and my value.
I love that. And it's so interesting because we sign up for it, right? We live it every day. We experience it every day. Yet it almost sounds like, because when you say we are worthy because we are here, and that's like number one, somehow that becomes secondary.
Yeah,
And now the evaluation of who I am at work becomes primary, almost to the point of stress. There's times that I have a deadline and it's almost like I feel like I'm in the wild being chased by a lion, right? Like that's the level of heartbeat and anxiety and, all the stress levels. But it's all because of a performance in a particular thing that we do.
it is. It
How
is.
does it become more important? Is it because, and I know you said, society and it's ingrained in us, but do we participate in that? Do we allow it to happen in a way?
Yeah, I think it is very natural, right? So two things. Your response to the stress is very natural, that fight or flight. It takes place
Hmm.
to different ways. Our
Yeah.
bodies are created, right, to do that. But I also think we do participate in it in that, again, we move from our worth being determined internally to what someone externally is saying. We
Mm.
over consciously and subconsciously. And it is, as we grow through our careers, it's sort of a vicious cycle, right? Think about
Yeah.
first time you got a job or got a promotion, how excited you were. You went to the training, you got your star for being there. And, whatever that first job was, whether it was flipping fries or selling shoes, somebody complimented you and that gave you a huge boost and made you think, oh my gosh, I've done something so great. And so consciously, we want to repeat that feeling.
Hmm.
Consciously, we want it even stronger than we do consciously. And so you're right. Every time then that the next thing happens at work, and Carol, it can be, like you said, a big deadline for a board meeting. It can be, did I say the right thing on the Zoom call at the team meeting? Right?
Yes.
Both of them give that same push and pull and that same burst of excitement, energy, and good enough. Was my comment good enough? Did I sound smart? Did I sound like I knew what I was talking about? It's all sort of related for us.
How can we? I'm going to go back to a little bit of my experience in coaching. I think your experience in coaching. I feel like when I'm coaching, there's a difference between gender and even racial when I'm coaching in terms of that self worth. It almost I see and find myself, and I'm curious about your coaching since you coach people to get into this C-suite, that there is not a lot of questions about worth when it comes from men. Like they do believe that I earned it. They do believe that I deserve that next level, that next promotion. Versus when I'm coaching women or minorities, that I have to do more convincing of like you got this. You've been doing the job. You are doing it and you are deserve it. And it's almost like there's so many questions about that. I'm not sure if you have a theory or a perspective of why you think that happens.
Yeah,
If it happens to you too, right? Because I found myself in that situation a lot.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that from a gender perspective, from a racial background perspective, there are some differences. So let me lay out my hypothesis for you. I am
Yeah.
not a social scientist, but I do study people. And so I think number one, from a gender perspective, from a very young age, right? If you think about how we are raised as men and women, and I'm going to make a gross generalization, definitely exceptions, but generally,
Yes.
men are raised in a very different way than women, right? They are raised to conquer, they are raised to win at all cost, they're raised to be at the top of the hierarchy. Women are often raised to support, to nurture, to offer, um, put others in front of themselves, and that is what success looks like. And so, very from the very beginning, our sense of worth is very much differently motivated and differently curated as men and women. And I think as men grow and get into the workforce, that continues. We know studies show that men will apply for jobs and they may only have 40 or 50% of what a job requires, but they feel like
Wow.
I can figure out the rest of it. Women will often not apply and will often have 90% or 100+% of what the role requires before they will apply for the role. And that has been proven repeatedly in studies at all levels, whether at the C suite or even at entry level. And all of that is from background, value, how they believe that they can show up and have that worth. So you're right. From the very beginning, it exists. I also think
Yeah,
that
it's interesting.
it's fascinating, right, to watch.
Yeah.
I think that it is encouraged then in the loudest and speak up the most are perceived to have a different level of value. I'm not going to call it the greatest level because I don't believe that, but it
Yeah.
isn't, right? We get coached from very early on. Speak up, have an opinion, make sure your voice is heard in the room. And men have traditionally been trained and prepared to do that differently than most women. Again, gross generalizations. So you see
Yeah.
that show. I think the third thing I would say is that while I have coached many men and know that they have vulnerabilities and often feel some of the same things that my women or female clients have, it is not as common for men to acknowledge this need of validation in the way that it is
Hmm.
for women. And so I think that discrepancy shows up in the workplace as well. And what I mean by that is that, again, we are looking for that attaboy, that pat on the back that you did a great job. Whereas women will often say, my work will speak for itself. I don't have to brag
Oh
about it.
God.
I just do the work, I'll get rewarded. And you and I both know that that is not always true. But that,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
No, I'm laughing because literally I had that conversation, I think last year, with an amazing, also gratefully woman of color leader that I have in our organization. And I still remember her telling me, I told her I'm the type of person that I like to do my work. I like to do it well. I don't want to network about it, talk about it, brag about it. Like I just want to sit down, look at my work, and my work will speak for itself. And her advice was so spot on, and I will always remember it. And she told me, "You're not going to keep growing or be successful in this organization if you keep thinking that way." And it is interesting because when I think about the way you know I was raised and the way we've been raised is about being very humble and being very grateful. And I do want to tell people about my work and tell them, oh, look how amazing it is that I did this, right? Also, because I believe deep down inside, even though I don't want to acknowledge it, that maybe I could do more, maybe I could be more. But it feels like I'm bragging. I'm not sure how to talk about the work that I do without coming across as bragging and not humble. And I actually know a woman leader that she constantly get coached on your number one problem is that you promote yourself a lot. So how can we navigate that, right? Where let's believe that for a moment, we believe we're worth it. Now, how do I believe that? How can I present my worth without being assumed that I'm bragging?
yeah. So it's a great question, Carol. And I'll just take the opportunity to shamelessly plug how I coach all my clients, male or female. And I tell
Yeah.
people, you absolutely should talk about the facts when you're talking about your work. And that is not bragging, but it is factual that you completed
Mm.
what project in whatever timeline under whatever budget constraints. It is factual that you gained X number of new clients and you did that with whatever resources you had or did not have. It is a fact that your goal was X and you achieved X plus. And so to talk about it factually remove some of the stigma that people have, whether they're men or women, people of color or not, about this bragging.
Hmm.
Also puts it back in terms of here's what I have accomplished for the business. Let me bring it back to worth, though, and how that really plays into that. You can't achieve
Yes.
those if you don't have value and if you haven't added value to the organization. And so when we talk
Mm.
about being validated, feeling like we are adding value, speaking factually helps to sort of reassure us and brings it back to here's what I did and brings it back to myself. So it's complicated and layered, but I think
Yes.
it's super possible and required that people do brag about factually what they have created. Now, we can have another session where we talk about this idea of sort of touting yourself, because I think there's room for that too. But I always say
Yes.
start with the facts and end with the facts, and that way you can tell your story. Does that make sense?
Makes complete sense. I took notes because I love facts and I can do facts.
Exactly.
And it doesn't make me feel shameful of the fact. I do have a question around different groups, right? And I love that you acknowledge, yeah, typically male, female presents differently for the most part, right? We also have cisgender and other genders that, present probably with some more one quality more than the other as well. I see it definitely more in minority groups. I do have a question around generations because I feel like the Gen Zers of the world and the alphas of the world are kind of claiming more of their spot on what they are worth than other generations. And I say that because I've heard a lot, not in the company I am right now, but in other companies, where it's like, we have this person that thinks they should get promoted in the next year or so, and I've been here for 10 years and I'm still trying to get promoted. What do this guy thinks? And so have you seen anything around that in your field?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point. Like, and here's the thing, I'm in love with all of the generations that exist today, because at the end of the day, and studies show you can do a million different assessments and tests, but there's a lot of consistency in what people want. And people
Mm-hmm.
to feel like they are adding value. So that crosses any generation. But here's the thing. If you think about the generations that are coexisting today, many of the younger generations, the Z, the alphas like you talked about, are parented by boomers, Gen X and Y, right? And so they have this really interesting position in that they have been told all their lives, you are great. You can do anything you want to do. You bring value. You are worthy. And they that may not have heard that, but as they grew, they wanted to make sure their children got it. And so
Mm-hmm.
that they have also been given space and room to be their full selves
Yep.
in a way that their parents weren't. And so it's created people that, to your point, step into the workforce thinking, hey, I'm here and you better recognize and give me all that is due to me. Whether I have earned it or not, my showing up means I'm adding value. And
Yes.
they do come in with bright ideas, with a willingness to test and try things and experiment. They don't tend to have some of the handcuffs about having to be right all the time. And so all of those things I think equate to a very different experience for younger generations that are in the workplace or wherever in the world. And so I do think that it shows up their own self-worth because it's been cultivated for so much longer. I think what happens though is they get into workplaces that are often led by people who have been in the workforce for a longer time, don't have the same level of self-worth or the same level of confidence even, and it sort of battles in this way. And you hear it
Yes.
like where people say you got to earn it. Like you can't come in and within 2 years be ready for these different roles or promotions. And Carol, that's true. In some cases, you do need a level of experience to get there, but in some cases, you really don't, right? Work is
Mm.
changing so quickly, and what the company needs might not be what it's done in the past. It might be something completely different that hasn't been done yet. And so that balance in organizations being able to recognize that there's a balance to be struck in the workplace today. Some companies are
I
better than
love it. I'm glad to hear that companies are getting better at acknowledging it more. What would you say to someone that has been working hard at a job and they believe they have earned a promotion and they have not gotten promoted yet? And they're questioning their self worth and their value because that hasn't happened. What would that conversation with that manager or employer should look like?
yeah.
So because I feel like we bring that baggage of I'm not worthy to those conversations. And I wonder if that may cause a different reaction when we're having those conversations with our employers.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think a couple of things, right? I think number one, I'm going to go back to the facts. And I would coach anyone that is interested or thinking about their career to always have sort of their fact sheet. What is it that you have accomplished? And then I would have a conversation with the manager or the leader and lay out those accomplishments against whatever expectations were set. And if expectations haven't been set, then it's a great place to start. And I would be very open, right? I coach people all the time, use your words. So I would say to the leader, look, I'm interested in growing my career and I want to be promoted. Here's the things that I have accomplished. Here's what I think your expectations were. Where's the gap? And what is it that I need to be working on? I think people also have to their own expectations around promotions. Companies are flattening today, right? Post the pandemic, organizational structures look very different. And so you have to think about, is the promotion title wise? Is it scope wise? Like, what are the real opportunities? So I think there's a lot of conversation there. Let me say one more thing though, because you talked about the whole worth piece. When you are preparing, or when a person is preparing that fact sheet, I think that's an opportunity to reground and reestablish the worth for yourself. Whether you get promoted or not, excuse me, does not again shake or impact your self worth or your value. But people have to remind themselves of that and reground themselves in that, separate and apart from your dialogue with their leader or their manager.
Thank you, because and I think I told you I don't know if I've told you the story, but I had a very real moment early in my career on the sense of worthiness and that promotion. There was a leader in my organization at the time who had a presidential title in the company. And I remember him giving a speech in one of the conferences, and he almost looked a little like saddened. And a couple of weeks later, he got let go. And I remember, wow, he was such a great leader. I do remember that. And, really sad that he's no longer with the company. 6 months later, he committed suicide. And his wife, made statements about not being the same after that moment of what happened. And that to me was such a big moment in my life in terms of your performance at your job. It's not worthy of you losing your life. Like, your life is completely separate and different than your job. But it was so ingrained in him that he couldn't come back from that loss. And so here you say, whether you get the promotion or not, it has nothing to do with your worth. It brings me back to that moment, that learning in my life. And I think that's why this episode is so important.
Yeah, Carol, you hit the nail on the head, right? Like even now when you say that story, I get goosebumps because for many people, it is really difficult to separate who we are from what we do. And I think in many cultures, and especially in the United States, where we work more than any country in the world, right? But work is how we define so much of who we are and what value we have. And so my heart breaks for that family, for that man to think that for a moment he thought that his value and his worth was all wrapped up in that one job. When you think about who we are and what we offer people, I often tell my clients when they have a big event coming up or they have to give a presentation, I coach them to just pause and remind yourself who you are, right? I am the daughter of Diane. I am the big sister of Stephen and Rodney. I am the aunt of Blake and Geo and Amara and Coleridge. I am the friend to Carol and Amanda and whoever. Like, just to help bring back to center who we are and how much we offer in the world outside of work. Sometimes people think it's corny, but I tell you what, Carol, it is a necessary reminder in an environment that, frankly, a corporation is an entity that will just take and take and take.
And take.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And, that leads me to the organization part, right? Because I do believe some work cultures are trying to emphasize that. What can companies do to help employees not only measure their values based on their worth?
I think organizations are starting to recognize this idea of what I just said, that people have lots of facets to their life outside of work. And so you see organizations doing much more towards community, what they bring and give to the community, whether it is helping to build homes, creating education programs. You see organizations recognizing the need for community within the organization, thinking about employee resource groups and that sort of thing. Some organizations you think are even going further when they think about talent and succession planning, looking to level the playing field more and creating goals, requirements around that. So I think and then finally, I think some organizations are listening to what their customers are demanding. And customers I'm only going to do business with you if I can be confident that you recognize broader groups and treat employees like full people. So I think all of those things are happening for organizations as they're hearing just the conversation like what you and I are having, that people are full cycle and that they have more than just the work that they do.
You would have told me that this was real a couple of years ago. I would have told you there's no way. I feel lucky enough that I'm now in an organization that allows me to be more than just their worker, right? Like I'm having this podcast. I have my own training company. Like I am more than just what I do for this particular company. And leads me to the next topic, which I've said this to several times, several clients. I will no longer join an organization that does not have an ERG group.
Mm.
I have been into a lot of organizations that do a lot of, just general belonging, general, everybody, we're all one kind of approach. And I almost see it like the I don't see color comment. Like
Yeah,
you're lacking acknowledging that we are all different and that's okay.
yeah,
And believe me, love, trying all different kinds of food from all the organizations coming together doing the potluck. That's great. But in reality, I want to connect with my Black ERG group and my Latino ERG group or all these beautiful groups because it allows me to bring an aspect of myself that I don't get to do when I'm actually doing the work.
yeah, yeah. And it reaffirms and revalidates the self part of you, right? Like it is difficult, I think, for the majority population to understand how draining it can be to be in a place where when you look around, no one looks like you, no one understands or hears things in the way that you do. And it is something that honestly, women and people of color live that duality all the time, especially in the environment. And so, to your point, ERGs are critical in helping people to feel secure, to feel whole, and to feel valued. And again, not that that value is all external, but when I see you, I can feel comfortable and confident in me one more time. And that continuous validation is occurring once again. So you're right. It is really, really critical.
Um, Something that happened also recently, not just to me, but I've heard this happen a lot. And it's the people that are waking up to my worth does not come from my company. Is that for me personally, like I no longer care about titles or promotions or increases. It was very freeing, but some managers found it really hard to manage. Like, I'm trying to help you out so you can get this next job. Don't you want my job? Don't you want the next promotion? I'm like, no, I don't. I want to do my job to my best of my abilities. I want to be really good at it. And I want to go home and bring the money I make here for my family and spend my time with my kids and my husband and travel. And you provide me with those benefits that allow me to do those things. But I don't need the promotion. So some managers struggle with that. Is one, what is your recommendation for those managers? And because it doesn't mean that my way is the right way. It doesn't mean that you need to live the life the way I get motivated. But what would be your recommendation for those managers that don't know how to promote someone if it's not based on promotion? And do you think that's common? That is hard to promote when you're trying to encourage someone to do their job by using a promotion as like the target,
And I think it's a growth opportunity for leaders and managers across the spectrum because you're right. It's a shift in what motivates people. And that's happening, especially after the pandemic, right? When people were looking around and realizing, look, people are losing their lives and you're worried about me hitting this number or whatever. How we are motivated shifts. And it happens naturally too. Think about when you first started your career, what was important versus important today versus what might be important 4 years from now. And so I think what managers have to do is spend the time understanding what's motivating this particular employee right now. And don't get me wrong, it's hard because every person is different and every person's at a different stage. But I think the part of their accountability as a leader is to understand what is it that is motivating this person at this point. And so I would love for all managers to have someone like yourself who has clarity and can articulate what it is that motivates them. You've done half the work. Now the manager can listen and respond to what you said and not sort of pull out the old tricks in their bag. Right. And so the things that motivate you would be challenging assignments so that you can still show that you really do know what you're doing, and then space to be left alone and get it done. I mean, I'm going to simplify it, but that's what I'm hearing you say. I still want to work. I want to do it in my time and how it works for me and my family, but I'm going to for you. And that's what you need. So of course you want to recognize when you deliver, but you're not looking for them to go into the talent conversation room and demand that Karol get promoted. That's not what you're asking. So it's important that leaders hear that, but really dig in and understand what is it that's motivating this particular employee this particular time.
Yes. And thank you for saying that, because I do believe that it is our responsibility as leaders to ask the right questions and understand where the person is at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've always told my teams, my job is to try to get you to where you want to go, whether that is your personal life, right, as much as I can help, or your professional life, or your next role outside of here, or your next career, whatever that is. I want to provide that help. But I think with your comment, taking a step further of what is motivating you at this time, because time changes, right? And I remember me 20 years ago was hungry and ambitious, and I was going to be a director by this age and a VP by this age, and I'm going to be all these things by a certain age. It was like I was going on my own ladder. I had no idea what realistic time frame was and where, but that was my own timeline. And now I'm a completely different person. You would ask me 20 years ago what motivated me. Tell me 20 years from now, you're not going to care about that. I would be like, you're crazy. I'm always going to care about this, right? We evolve, we change. And the most important thing is that I think what I appreciate about you saying here today is your worth continues to be the same thing, which is you. So even if you're a different person from 20 years ago and that you are today, you are still you and you're worth it because of who you are.
That's exactly right. Yeah. What I like to tell people, Karol, is that your worth comes and goes with you, right? You being here is of value, no matter what the situation is. And so if I go back to the story, the heartbreaking story you shared where the man took his life, at some point, he had enough moments where he thought, I have no more value to offer. There is nothing worth the space I take up on the earth that gives to anyone else that anyone else finds value in. And I just say that that is never true. Every person has value and worth, and it comes and goes with them regardless of the circumstance.
I love that. Tammi, I want to thank you for today. This has been wonderful. I always learn so much from you. Even when we're having casual conversations, I feel like you coach me and you make me a better person, and the life values that you provide. But also what I love is your honesty, your approach, and your heart and your vision for what's right and what's wrong. And it makes the world better. So thank you.
Well, and Karol, I want to thank you. You know, I am so proud of you.